Hey there. If you've found your way here, perhaps you're seeking a moment of respite, a brief escape from the clamor of modern life. Tonight, we'll embark on a journey back in time, to an era when fairness was measured not by words, but by weight, and trust was built upon the foundations of flour and foam. This is the tale of the public weighing of bread and ale, a forgotten ritual that once shaped the fabric of everyday life in the medieval world. So settle in, take a deep breath, and allow the whispers of the past to envelop you as we explore this fascinating custom. In the bustling marketplaces and town squares of medieval Europe, a curious scene would unfold regularly, one that might seem strange to our modern eyes, yet was an integral part of maintaining order and fairness in those bygone days. Picture, if you will, a crowd gathered around a large set of scales, their eyes fixed intently on the proceedings. At the center of this spectacle stood the ale cunner or bread weigher, a figure of authority tasked with ensuring that the staples of medieval life, bread and ale, met the strict standards set by local authorities. The practice of publicly weighing bread and ale was more than just a quaint custom. It was a cornerstone of medieval consumer protection. In an age before standardized measurements in mass production, this ritual served as a safeguard against unscrupulous bakers and brewers, who might be tempted to shortchange their customers. The public nature of these weighings added an element of transparency and accountability that helped to build trust between producers and consumers. Let's first turn our attention to bread, that most basic and essential of foods. The importance of bread in medieval society cannot be overstated. It was quite literally the staff of life for most people. As such, ensuring its quality and fair measure was of paramount importance. The bread weigher would carefully place each loaf on the scales, comparing its weight to the standards set by local ordinances. These standards varied from place to place and could change based on the availability and cost of grain, but the principle remained the same: a fair weight for a fair price. Imagine the tension as a baker brought forth their day's production, knowing that their reputation and indeed their livelihood hung in the balance. A loaf found to be underweight could result in fines, public humiliation, or even more severe punishments for repeat offenders. Some towns had creative ways of dealing with dishonest bakers, such as the infamous ducking stool, where the offender would be dunked into a river or pond as punishment. But it wasn't just the weight that mattered. The quality of the bread was also subject to scrutiny. The texture, color, and taste were all considered, ensuring that the bread met the expected standards of the community. This attention to detail extended beyond mere sustenance. It was a matter of civic pride and social cohesion. Now, let's turn our attention to ale, that frothy beverage that quenched the thirst of medieval folk and provided a safer alternative to often contaminated water sources. The ale conner's job was perhaps even more complex than that of the bread weigher, for they had to assess not just the quantity, but also the quality of the brew. Picture a seasoned ale cunner, their senses finely tuned to the nuances of good ale. They would first examine the clarity and color of the ale, ensuring it met the expected standards. Then came the crucial test, the taste. The ale cunner would take a sip, rolling it around their mouth to assess its flavor, strength, and overall quality. But the test didn't end there. In a practice that might raise eyebrows today, the ale cunner would often pour a small amount of ale onto a wooden bench and sit in it, wearing leather breeches. Why, you might ask, would someone sit in a puddle of ale? The answer lies in the sticky nature of good ale. If the ale was of proper quality and strength, it would adhere to the leather, causing the ale cunner to stick slightly to the bench when they stood up. This peculiar test was a way of gauging the ale's body and alcohol content, ensuring that brewers weren't watering down their product to increase profits. The public weighing and testing of ale served multiple purposes. It ensured that customers were getting a fair measure for their money, but it also helped maintain the quality of a beverage that was not just a luxury, but a dietary staple. In an age before widespread literacy, when many transactions were based on trust and reputation, these public demonstrations of quality control were essential in maintaining social order and economic fairness. As we delve deeper into this medieval custom, it's worth considering the broader implications of such practices. The public weighing of bread and ale wasn't just about ensuring fair trade. It was a reflection of the values and priorities of medieval society. It spoke to a communal understanding of fairness, a shared responsibility for the well-being of all members of society, and a recognition of the importance of trust in everyday transactions. In many ways, these rituals served as a form of public theater, reinforcing social norms and expectations. They were a visible reminder of the consequences of dishonesty and the rewards of fair dealing. For the average medieval person, witnessing these weighings and testings would have been a regular part of life, a reassurance that there were systems in place to protect their interests and maintain order in their community. The roles of bread weigher and ale cunner were positions of significant responsibility and respect within medieval communities. These individuals were often elected or appointed based on their reputation for honesty and good judgment. Their decisions could make or break the livelihoods of bakers and brewers, and as such, they were expected to be above reproach, immune to bribery or favoritism. As we reflect on this practice from our modern perspective, it's easy to see parallels with contemporary consumer protection laws and food safety regulations. While we may no longer gather in town squares to watch our bread being weighed or our ale being tested, the principles behind these medieval customs, fairness, transparency, and quality assurance continue to shape our expectations of the goods we consume. The story of the public weighing of bread and ale is more than just a quaint historical anecdote. It is a window into a world where the rhythms of daily life were intimately tied to the production and consumption of these staple goods. It reminds us of a time when community bonds were forged through shared rituals and mutual trust, when the quality of life was measured in loaves and pints. As we bring our journey through this medieval custom to a close, take a moment to consider how these ancient practices echo through time, shaping our modern understanding of fairness and quality. In a world that often seems to move too fast, there's something comforting in remembering these slower, more deliberate rituals of the past. So the next time you bite into a loaf of bread or sip a pint of ale, perhaps you'll pause for a moment and think of those long ago bread weighers and ale cunners, guardians of quality in a world far removed from our own, yet connected to us through the timeless human desire for fairness and trust in our daily bread and brew. In the hushed moments before dawn, a medieval town square lies in peaceful slumber. The cobblestones, worn smooth by countless footsteps, glisten with morning dew. A gentle breeze whispers through empty market stalls, carrying with it the promise of a new day. As the first rays of sunlight peek over the horizon, the square begins to stir, awakening to the rhythms of daily life. Wooden shutters creak open, and the soft glow of candlelight spills onto the streets. The air fills with the aroma of freshly baked bread, wafting from nearby bakeries. In the distance, the faint clanging of church bells signals the start of another day in this close-knit community. As the town slowly comes to life, a figure emerges from the shadows. The official weigher, a man of great responsibility, makes his way to the center of the square. In his hands, he carries the tools of his trade, a set of scales and weights, polished to a shine from years of use. These simple instruments hold the power to maintain order and fairness in the town's most essential transactions. The weigher sets up his station with practiced ease, his movements deliberate and precise. He knows that his role, though often overlooked, is crucial to the fabric of society. For in this world, where every morsel of food is precious, the accurate weighing of bread and ale is a matter of utmost importance. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the square begins to fill with townsfolk. Bakers arrive with baskets, piled high with loaves of various shapes and sizes. Brewers roll in barrels of ale, their contents sloshing gently with each turn of the wheel. The air buzzes with anticipation as vendors and customers alike prepare for the day's transactions. The weigher takes his position, ready to oversee each exchange. His keen eye watches as loaves are placed on one side of the scale, counterbalanced by carefully calibrated weights on the other. The balance trembles, seeking equilibrium before settling into place. With each measurement, the weigher ensures that no one is cheated, that each citizen receives their fair share. This ritual, repeated countless times throughout the day, is more than just a simple act of commerce. It is a testament to the town's commitment to justice and equality. In a world where hunger is never far away, the proper distribution of food and drink is a matter of survival. As the day wears on, the square becomes a hive of activity. Voices rise and fall in negotiation. Laughter echoes between the buildings, and the clinking of coins punctuates each successful trade. Through it all, the weigher remains a constant presence, a silent guardian of fairness and order. Children gather to watch the proceedings, wide-eyed with curiosity. They marvel at the precision of the scales, the way the weigher's hands move with such confidence and skill. For them, this daily spectacle is a lesson in the importance of honesty and the value of community. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the square, the pace of activity slows. The weigher's work, however, is not yet done. He carefully checks and rechecks his equipment, ensuring that everything is in order for the next day's weighing. In the fading light, he reflects on the significance of his role. Though he may never lead armies or make grand proclamations, his humble task helps to bind the community together. Each accurate measurement is a thread in the tapestry of trust that weaves through the town. As twilight settles over the square, the weigher gathers his tools and prepares to return home. The day's transactions are complete, but their impact lingers. In homes throughout the town, families gather around tables laden with fairly measured bread and ale, sharing meals and stories. The weigher's work may not be glamorous or celebrated in song, but it is essential. It is a reminder that even the smallest acts of fairness and integrity can have far-reaching consequences. In this medieval world, where life often hangs in a delicate balance, the public weighing of bread and ale is a cornerstone of communal life. As night falls and the square empties, the scales stand silent, waiting for the dawn of a new day. They are a symbol of the town's commitment to justice, a promise renewed with each sunrise. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world seems to hold its breath, these simple tools stand as guardians of a fragile peace. The story of this town, like countless others across the medieval landscape, is not one of grand battles or political intrigue. It is a tale of everyday people, bound together by shared values and common needs. The public weighing of bread and ale is but one chapter in this ongoing narrative, a small but vital part of the larger story of human civilization. As the stars twinkle overhead, the town sleeps, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow will bring another day of fair trade and communal spirit. The wayer, too, rests ready to take up his post once more when morning comes. In the grand tapestry of history, these quiet moments may seem insignificant. Yet it is in these daily rituals, these small acts of fairness and trust, that the true strength of a society is revealed. The public weighing of bread and ale, humble though it may be, is a testament to the enduring human desire for justice and community. As the night deepens and the town dreams, the whispers of countless such days echo through time. They speak of a world where simple measures carried great meaning, where the weighing of bread and ale was as vital to the community as the grandest cathedral or the mightiest castle. In the quiet dawn of tomorrow, the market square will once again stir to life. The scales will be set, the loaves weighed, and the ale measured. And in this simple act, the story of this medieval town and countless others like it will continue to unfold, one fair transaction at a time. The heart of town was the square, a bustling stage of commerce and community. At its center, a pair of brass-plated scales rested atop a sturdy oak table, gleaming in the morning light. Each day, as the sun crept over the rooftops, the chosen peeper, often a respected guild member or town elder, would arrive to prepare the scales for the day's weighing. With practiced hands, the keeper would align the weights, their fingers tracing the smooth brass surfaces, wiping away any lingering tarnish. The scales were more than mere tools. They were the embodiment of fairness and trust that bound the townsfolk together. As the keeper worked, the square slowly came to life, the soft murmur of greetings and the rustle of baskets filling the air. Shopkeepers emerged from their dwellings, unfurling awnings and arranging wares. The baker's apprentice, face still flushed from the heat of the ovens, wheeled out a cart laden with fresh loaves, their aroma wafting through the crisp morning air. From the alehouse, barrels of newly brewed ale were rolled out, their contents awaiting inspection and measure. As the sun climbed higher, the square filled with townsfolk, each carrying their own goods or coming to purchase the day's necessities. Children darted between the legs of adults, their laughter mingling with the clinking of coins and the creaking of wooden carts. The scales stood as silent sentinels, ready to weigh and measure, to ensure that each transaction was fair and just. The first to approach the scales was often the baker, his arms cradling a basket of bread still warm from the oven. With reverence, he placed a loaf upon the brass plate, watching intently as the keeper adjusted the weights. The crowd held its breath, for the weight of the bread was no small matter. Too light, and the baker would face fines or worse. Too heavy, and his profits would dwindle. As the scales settled, a collective sigh of relief or murmur of approval would ripple through the onlookers. The keeper would nod, marking the weight in a leather-bound ledger, his quill scratching out the day's first entry. The baker, either beaming with pride or frowning in concern, would move aside, allowing the next vendor to step forward. Next came the brewer, rolling forward a barrel of ale. The process here was more complex, involving not just weight, but also quality and strength. The keeper would produce a special float, carefully calibrated to measure the ale's potency. As it bobbed in a sample drawn from the barrel, the crowd would lean in, eager to see if the brew met the town's exacting standards. Throughout the day, the scales would see a parade of goods: sacks of grain, wheels of cheese, cuts of meat, and baskets of vegetables. Each item was weighed, each measure recorded, building a tapestry of the town's commerce, one transaction at a time. The keeper moved with deliberate care, for his role was not just to weigh, but to mediate, to ensure that both buyer and seller left satisfied. As noon approached, the square would reach its zenith of activity. The air filled with the calls of vendors, the haggling of customers, and the occasional dispute that required the keeper's intervention. Children perched on the edges of fountains, munching on fresh bread and watching the spectacle with wide eyes. Elders gathered on benches, sharing news and gossip as they observed the ebb and flow of trade. As scales, ever present, continued their work. A farmer's wife brought forth a basket of eggs, each one carefully placed on the brass plate. A blacksmith presented his newly forged tools, their weight a testament to their quality. A weaver offered bolts of cloth, the scales determining the fair price for each length. As the afternoon wore on, the keeper's ledger filled with neat rows of figures, a meticulous record of the day's transactions. The town's officials would often pass by, nodding approvingly at the orderly process. For in these daily weighings, they saw not just commerce, but the very fabric of their community trust made tangible, fairness even form. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the square. The crowd thinned, baskets now full, errands complete. Vendors packed away their remaining wares, already planning for the morrow. The keeper, his day's work nearly done, began the careful process of cleaning and storing the scales. With a soft cloth, he wiped down the brass plates, ensuring they were free of any residue that might affect the next day's measurements. The weights were checked one final time, then placed in their velvet-lined box. The ledger was closed, its pages a testament to the day's fair dealings. As twilight settled over the town, the square took on a different character. The bustle of commerce gave way to the quiet of evening. Lamps were lit, casting a warm glow over the cobblestones. The scales, now covered and protected, stood silent, their work done until the dawn. Yet even in their rest, the scales remained at the heart of the town's life. For in their presence, in the daily ritual of weighing and measuring, the townsfolk found more than just fair trade. They found a shared purpose, a common ground where miller and baker, brewer and farmer all stood equal before the brass plates. In the taverns and homes that evening, conversations would turn to the day's events. Tales would be told of particularly fine loaves, of ale that exceeded expectations, of disputes settled fairly by the keeper's steady hand. And through it all, the scales would be mentioned not as mere objects, but as trusted friends, as guardians of the town's prosperity and peace. As night fell fully, and the square lay empty save for the occasional watchman on his rounds, the scales rested. They waited for the new day, for the keeper's touch, for the weight of bread and the measure of ale. For in their brass and oak, and their balance and precision, lay the very soul of the town, a place where trust was not just a word, but a daily practice, weighed and measured for all to see. The sun had barely risen over the town square, yet already a crowd had gathered. The air was thick with anticipation, for today was the day of public weighing. At the center stood the official scales, their brass arms gleaming in the early morning light. The townsfolk huddled close, their eyes fixed upon the instruments that would determine the fairness of their daily bread and ale. First came the loaves, fresh from the ovens, their crusts still warm to the touch. The baker, a stout man with flour-dusted hands, placed each loaf upon the scale with reverence. The crowd watched in silence as the weights were adjusted, the balance seeking its equilibrium. Each loaf was measured against the standard, ensuring that no household would be cheated of their sustenance. But it was the ale that truly captured the hearts of those assembled. As the first cask was rolled into view, a murmur rippled through the crowd. The ale master, a man of great respect in the community, stepped forward. His weathered hands grasped the tap, and with practiced ease, he began to pour. The ale flowed like liquid gold, deep amber in hue, its aroma rich with the promise of comfort and camaraderie. The clay pots, humble in appearance yet vital in their purpose, stood ready to receive their measure. As the first pot was filled, the crowd leaned in, their collective breath held in anticipation. The ale master lifted the pot, its contents swirling gently, and placed it upon the scale. The balance arm quivered, seeking its true position. This was more than a simple act of measurement. It was a ritual that bound the community together, a testament to the trust between brewer and consumer. For in these times, ale was not merely a drink to be enjoyed in moments of leisure. It was sustenance, a vital source of nourishment that could mean the difference between health and hunger. The careful weighing of each pot ensured that no one would be shortchanged, that each citizen would receive their fair share of this liquid bread. As the weighing continued, the atmosphere in the square shifted from tense observation to one of communal satisfaction. Neighbors exchanged nods of approval, and even the most skeptical among them seemed pleased with the proceedings. The public weighing was more than a practical necessity. It was a reaffirmation of the bonds that held their society together. The ale master moved with deliberate care, filling pot after pot, each one weighed with the same attention to detail as the first. The scales creaked and settled, time and again, as the morning wore on. Children watched wide-eyed, learning the importance of fairness and measure in all things. Beyond the square, the town began to stir to life. The smell of fresh bread mingled with the earthy scent of ale, wafting through the streets and alleyways. Shopkeepers opened their doors, and farmers brought their wares to market, but still the weighing continued. As the last pot was filled and weighed, a collective sigh of relief and contentment swept through the gathered crowd. The ale master stepped back, wiping his brow with a satisfied smile. The baker, too, nodded in approval, his day's work validated by the public scales. The town crier, his voice carrying across the square, announced the completion of the weighing. Hear thee, hear thee. The bread is true, and the ale is fair. Let all know that our measures are just and our community strong. With these words, the crowd began to disperse, each person carrying with them the assurance that their daily bread and ale would be honest in measure and pure in quality. Conversations buzzed with approval, and plans were made for evening gatherings where the fruits of this morning's labor would be enjoyed. As the square emptied, the scales stood silent, their work done for another day. Yet their presence remained a constant reminder of the values that underpinned the community: fairness, honesty, and the shared responsibility of ensuring that no one went without their due. The ale, now officially weighed and approved, would soon find its way to taverns and homes throughout the town. In the cool cellars of the alehouses, casks stood ready, their contents a promise of comfort after a long day's work. In homes, families prepared their evening meals, knowing that the ale they would drink had been measured true. For in this time and place, the public weighing of bread and ale was more than a mere formality. It was a cornerstone of community life, a ritual that bound neighbor to neighbor and ensured that the fruits of their collective labor were were shared equitably among all. As the day wore on, the importance of the morning's events settled into the rhythm of daily life. In workshops and fields, men and women went about their tasks with the quiet assurance that when they gathered to break bread and share ale, they did so as equals, each receiving their fair measure. The clay pots, now filled and distributed, found their places on tables throughout the town. As evening approached, families and friends came together, raising their pots in silent acknowledgement of the system that ensured their fairness. The deep amber liquid within was a testament to the brewer's skill and the community's trust. In taverns, the atmosphere grew lively as workers ended their day. The ale flowed freely, each pot a reminder of the morning ceremony. Conversations turned to matters of trade and governance, for a people assured of fair measure in their daily sustenance were free to turn their minds to loftier concerns. As night fell, the town settled into a contented quiet. The public scales, now shrouded in darkness, stood as silent sentinels. They would be there again tomorrow, and the day after, a constant in a world of change, ensuring that as long as there was bread to be baked and ale to be brewed, there would be fairness in their measure. And so, as the townspeople drifted off to sleep, their bellies full and their thirsts quenched, they did so with the knowledge that in this small corner of the world, justice was served not only in courts of law, but in every loaf of bread and every pot of ale. It was a simple thing, perhaps, this public weighing, but in its simplicity lay the foundation of a society built on trust, fairness, and the shared belief that in matters of sustenance, as in all things, measure mattered. In the bustling marketplace, the air hung heavy with the scent of freshly baked bread and the earthy aroma of ale. The public weighing of these staples had become a ritual, a cornerstone of community life that brought together bakers, brewers, and townsfolk alike. As the morning light filtered through the wooden beams of the market hall, the scale keeper took his place, ready to begin the day's proceedings. The first loaves arrived, carried in woven baskets by apprentices with flour-dusted aprons. They approached the scales with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, for the weight of their bread would determine not only their reputation, but also their livelihood. The scale keeper, a man of few words but great precision, carefully placed each loaf upon the balance. As he worked, a gentle murmur of conversation filled the air. "How fares your wheat crop this season?" one farmer inquired of another. "The rains came late, but the yield looks promising," came the reply, tinged with cautious optimism. Such exchanges were the lifeblood of the community, binding its members together through shared concerns and collective hopes. The weighing continued, each measurement a small drama unto itself. When a loaf fell short, the baker would step forward, brow furrowed, to examine the scales. "Perhaps we should check the weights once more," he might suggest, his voice steady but betraying a hint of worry. The scale keeper would nod, his movements deliberate as he recalibrated the balance. It was a dance of precision and trust, performed countless times throughout the year. As the morning wore on, the focus shifted to the ale barrels. Brewers rolled their casks forward, the wood creaking under the weight of their contents. The scale keeper adjusted his instruments, for liquid required a different touch than bread. "How does the new batch fare?" a regular customer might ask, leaning in with interest. "We've tried a new blend of hops," the brewer would reply, pride evident in his voice. "It lends a subtle bitterness that I think you'll enjoy." Throughout the proceedings, the scale keeper remained a constant presence, his hands moving with the surety of long practice. He was more than just an arbiter of weights and measures. He was a guardian of fairness, ensuring that each transaction was conducted with honesty and transparency. His role was vital, for in these measurements lay the foundation of trust upon which the entire market economy was built. As noon approached, the pace of weighing slowed, and conversations turned to matters beyond commerce. Children darted between the stalls, their laughter a counterpoint to the serious business at hand. Elders gathered on benches, sharing stories and wisdom accumulated over decades. The market was not merely a place of trade, but a beating heart of social interaction, where news was exchanged and relationships were forged and maintained. In one corner, a heated debate broke out over the merits of different brewing techniques. "It's all in the malting," insisted one brewer, his voice rising with passion. "Nonsense," retorted another. "The secret lies in the water source." The scalekeeper listened with half an ear, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Such discussions were as much a part of the weighing day as the measurements themselves. As the afternoon wore on, the rhythm of the weighing continued, punctuated by the occasional need for adjustments. "A touch more on the counterweight," the scalekeeper would murmur, his fingers dancing across the balance with practiced ease. Those around him watched in respectful silence, acknowledging the importance of his craft. The day's events were more than just a series of transactions. They were a reflection of the community's values and priorities. Each weighing was a reaffirmation of the social contract, a reminder that fairness and honesty were the bedrock upon which their society was built. The scalekeeper's role, though seemingly mundane, was in fact deeply symbolic, embodying the principles of justice and equity that governed their lives. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the marketplace, the final measurements were taken. Bakers and brewers gathered their goods, some satisfied with the day's outcome, others already planning improvements for the next batch. The scalekeeper began the meticulous process of cleaning and storing his equipment, each piece treated with the reverence it deserved. In these closing moments, the true spirit of the weighing day revealed itself. It was not merely about ensuring correct measures, but about reinforcing the bonds of community. As people lingered, reluctant to leave, conversations turned to matters of the Hart family news, shared joys, and common sorrows. The marketplace became a sanctuary of human connection, where the weight of life's burdens could be shared and lightened. As twilight settled over the town, the last echoes of the day's activities faded away. The scalekeeper locked the doors of the market hall, his work complete for another day. Yet the impact of his efforts would ripple outward, touching every aspect of community life. For in the simple act of weighing bread and ale, he had helped to maintain the delicate balance of trust and fairness upon which their society depended. In the quiet of the evening, as families gathered around their tables to share bread and ale, the legacy of the public weighing lived on. Each bite, each sip, carried with it the assurance of fair measure, a testament to the care and attention invested in its creation. And so, the cycle would continue, day after day, year after year, a timeless ritual that bound the community together in a web of mutual respect and shared responsibility. As night fell, the marketplace stood empty, but the spirit of the day lingered, a reminder that in the most ordinary of actions, the extraordinary fabric of human society was woven and maintained. The public weighing of bread and ale was more than a practical necessity. It was a celebration of community, a reaffirmation of shared values, and a testament to the enduring power of trust and fairness in shaping the world we inhabit. In medieval towns, the public weighing of bread and ale was more than a mere transaction. It was a solemn ritual that bound the community together. As the sun rose over the cobblestone streets, the town crier's voice echoed through narrow alleys, summoning citizens to witness the day's proceedings. The weighing, a cornerstone of civic life, was not simply about commerce, but about establishing trust in a world fraught with uncertainty. The town square, typically bustling with the chatter of merchants and the cries of street vendors, fell into a reverent hush as the official scales were brought forth. These were no ordinary instruments, but symbols of justice and fairness, carefully stored and maintained throughout the year for this very purpose. The scales, often adorned with intricate engravings and blessed by the local clergy, stood as a testament to the gravity of the occasion. As the Reeve, the king's representative in the town, approached the scales, a palpable tension filled the air. Flanked by members of the bakers' and brewers' guilds, he carried with him the weight of tradition and the expectations of the townspeople. The Reeve's role was not merely to oversee the weighing, but to embody the very notion of fairness that underpinned the social fabric. The first loaves of bread were brought forward, their golden crusts glistening in the morning light. Each baker, having risen long before dawn to prepare their wares, watched with bated breath as their creations were placed upon the scales. The crowd leaned in, eyes fixed on the balance, for in these moments, reputations were made or broken. As the scales settled, the Reeve's voice rang out, declaring the weight of each loaf. Those that met the standard were marked with a seal of approval, a small wax emblem that spoke volumes to potential buyers. For the bakers whose loaves fell short, the consequences were swift and public fines, public shaming, or in severe cases, expulsion from the guild. The ritual then turned to the ale, barrels rolled forward by stout-armed apprentices. The brewers, no less anxious than their baker counterparts, watched as samples were drawn and measured. The quality of the ale was as important as its quantity, with tasters on hand to ensure that the brew met the town's exacting standards. Throughout the proceedings, Latin incantations wove through the air, blessings uttered by attending clergy. These words, incomprehensible to most, nevertheless carried weight, infusing the mundane act of measurement with divine sanction. It was a reminder that even in matters of commerce, the sacred and profane were inextricably linked. As the day wore on, the ritual expanded beyond bread and ale. Merchants brought forth their own weights and measures, seeking the Reeve's approval and the application of official seals. These seals, often bearing the insignia of the town or guild, were more than mere stamps. They were guarantees of honesty in a world where deceit could mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. The peasants, too, played their part in this grand performance. Though they might not have owned businesses or held positions of power, their presence was crucial. They stood as witnesses, their watchful eyes a deterrent against corruption and a reminder that the rituals of fairness served all, not just the wealthy and powerful. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, the day's weighing drew to a close. The Reeve, his voice now hoarse from hours of proclamations, offered a final blessing upon the gathered crowd. The scales were carefully packed away to be stored until the next year's ceremony. But the impact of the day's events would linger, rippling through every transaction and exchange in the months to come. In the taverns and homes that evening, conversations buzzed with the day's events. Who had prospered, whose goods had fallen short, and what it all meant for the town's future. For in these rituals of fairness, the community saw a reflection of itself, its values, its aspirations, and its commitment to justice. The public weighing was more than a practical necessity. It was a reaffirmation of the social contract that bound lord and peasant, merchant and customer. In a world where life was often short and brutal, where plague and war could strike without warning, these ceremonies provided a measure of stability and predictability. As darkness fell and the town settled into its nightly rhythms, the impact of the day's events continued to resonate. In every loaf of bread broken at the dinner table, in every mug of ale raised in toast, the citizens of the town tasted not just sustenance, but the fruits of a system that strove for fairness. The rituals of weighing, seemingly simple acts of measurement, were in truth the very foundation upon which medieval society built its notions of trust and reciprocity. They were a reminder that even in a world of stark inequalities, there existed spaces where justice could prevail, where the scales could balance the interests of all. And so, as the town drifted off to sleep, the echoes of Latin blessings still lingering in the air, a sense of reassurance settled over the community. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own injustices. But for now, in this moment, fairness had been seen to be done. The modest ceremonies of the day had once again underpinned trust in a fragile world, a world where the weight of a loaf of bread could speak volumes about the health of a society. As the day's light waned, the bustling square slowly surrendered to the encroaching dusk. The public weighing of bread and ale, a ritual as old as the town itself, drew to a close. Scales creaked one last time, their brass arms settling into stillness. Merchants folded their awnings, the snap of canvas punctuating the evening air. In the fading light, the last of the townspeople shuffled homeward, their purchases clutched close. Loaves of bread, still warm from the ovens, nestled in baskets alongside jugs of freshly brewed ale. The scent of yeast and hops lingered, a ghostly reminder of the day's commerce. The town crier's voice, hoarse from hours of proclamations, fell silent. His bell, now muffled in a leather pouch, swung idly at his side as he made his way towards the tavern. The cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of feet, echoed with the last footfalls of the day. As shadows lengthened, the square took on a different character. Where once stood rows of stalls and a sea of faces, now lay empty spaces and long shadows. The waitmaster's booth, a squat wooden structure at the heart of the square, stood sentinel over the emptiness. Its shutters were drawn tight, the official ledgers safely locked away until the morrow. In the taverns that ringed the square, lamps flickered to life. The warm glow spilled out onto the streets, beckoning weary souls inside. The day's business concluded, townsfolk gathered to share meals and stories. The clinking of tankards and the low murmur of conversation replaced the day's cacophony of haggling and announcements. Inside the Boar's Head, the largest tavern in town, the air was thick with pipe smoke and the aroma of roasting meat. Farmers sat shoulder to shoulder with merchants, their earlier transactions forgotten in the camaraderie of the evening. A bard in the corner strummed a lute, his melody weaving through the conversations like a golden thread. At a table near the hearth, the town's baker and brewer sat in animated discussion. Their wares, so carefully weighed and measured earlier, now flowed freely. Thick slices of dark bread were passed around, accompanied by foaming mugs of ale. The day's profits and losses were dissected, plans for the morrow laid out between bites and sips. In the kitchen, the tavern's cook labored over a massive iron pot. Steam rose in fragrant clouds as he stirred a hearty stew. Vegetables from the market square, bought at day's end when prices fell, bobbed in the rich broth. A joint of meat, traded for a week's worth of bread, simmered slowly, promising sustenance for the night's patrons. As the evening deepened, talk turned from business to pleasure. Tales were spun, sung true, some embellished by ale and imagination. The waitmaster, his official robes exchanged for more comfortable attire, held court at the bar. His stories of attempted deceptions and cunning tricks drew laughs and gasps in equal measure. Outside, the night air grew cool. A gentle breeze swept through the square, carrying with it the last whispers of the day. Stray pieces of straw, remnants of the market's bustle, danced in lazy circles before coming to rest in corners and crevices. In the narrow streets leading away from the square, windows glowed with candlelight. Families gathered around tables, breaking bread that had been weighed and approved mere hours before. Children listened wide-eyed to their parents' recounting of the day's events, imagining the excitement of the public, weighing they were too young to attend. The town guard made their rounds, their torches casting long shadows on the walls. They paused at the square, ensuring all was secure for the night. The waitmaster's booth was checked, its lock tested. Satisfied, they moved on, their footsteps fading into the darkness. In the quieter corners of town, the day's events were still being processed. A young apprentice baker sat by candlelight, carefully recording the day's sales in a worn ledger. His fingers, dusted with flour, traced the columns of figures. Tomorrow's bread would need to be started soon, the cycle beginning anew before this day had fully ended. At the brewery, the master brewer made one last check of his barrels. The ale within continued its slow fermentation, unaware of the scrutiny it had faced earlier. In the stillness of the night, the occasional pop and hiss of escaping gases was the only sound. Back in the square, a stray cat prowled, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. It paused to sniff at a discarded crust of bread before moving on, a silent guardian of the night. The town clock chimed the hour, its deep tones rolling across the rooftops and down empty streets. As midnight approached, even the taverns began to quiet. One by one, patrons made their way home, their steps sometimes unsteady, but their spirits lifted by food, drink, and companionship. Tavern keepers swept floors and wiped tables, preparing for another day. In homes throughout the town, people settled into bed, their thoughts already turning to the morrow. Bakers would rise before dawn, their ovens warming in anticipation of the day's bread. Brewers would check their ales, judging which were ready for sale. And in the square, the waitmaster would once again take his place, ready to ensure fairness in every transaction. The night deepened, wrapping the town in a blanket of stars. The square lay silent, a far cry from the bustling hive of activity it had been. Yet in that silence lay promise, of bread rising in ovens, of ale maturing in barrels, of another day of commerce and community to come. As the last candle was extinguished and the final door latched, all was still. The public weighing of bread and ale, a cornerstone of town life, had come and gone. But its echoes remained, in full bellies and contented hearts, in ledgers balanced and friendships renewed. And in the gentle night breeze, carrying the faint scent of yeast and hops, lay the whispered promise of tomorrow's bread and ale, waiting to be weighed, sold, and savored anew. As the day's final light fades, let your mind wander to a time long past, when the heart of every town beat to the rhythm of the public scales. Picture the weathered wooden platform, worn smooth by countless feet, and the heavy iron weights. their surfaces etched with the patina of countless measurements. In the quiet of the night, imagine the soft clink of metal against metal as the scales found their balance, a sound that once echoed through bustling marketplaces and now whispers in the corridors of history. The public weighing of bread and ale was more than a mere transaction. It was a ritual that bound communities together, a testament to the trust between baker and buyer, brewer and patron. As you settle into the comfort of your bed, let the weight of your day's worries be measured against the enduring legacy of fairness and honesty that these scales represented. In the stillness of your room, envision the town crier, his voice carrying through narrow cobblestone streets, announcing the day's official weights and measures. The reassuring cadence of his call, now lost to time, once brought a sense of order to chaotic marketplaces and a promise of justice to every hearth and home. Close your eyes and feel the rough texture of a freshly baked loaf, its warmth seeping through your fingers as it's placed upon the scale. The baker, flour dusting his apron, watches with pride as the loaf meets its mark, a silent affirmation of his craft and integrity. The scales do not lie, they say, and in their truth, a community finds its foundation. As sleep begins to embrace you, let your thoughts drift to the alehouses of old, where barrels of rich, amber liquid awaited their turn on the scales. The air thick with the scent of hops and barley, patrons gathered around, their conversations a low hum of anticipation. The official weigher, his role as revered as it was essential, carefully measures each cask, ensuring that every drop is accounted for, every transaction fair and true. In your mind's eye, see the glint of copper coins changing hands. Hear the satisfied nods of merchants and customers alike as the scales tip and balance. This was more than commerce. It was a dance of trust, a silent agreement that bound neighbor to neighbor, stranger to stranger, in a web of mutual respect and shared values. As the night deepens, let the gentle sway of the scales in your imagination lull you towards dreams. Think of how these simple instruments and their unwavering honesty shaped the very fabric of society. They were the arbiters of fairness, the guardians of quality, the silent sentinels that stood watch over the daily bread and nightly ale of countless generations. Remember the children who would gather around the scales, wide-eyed and curious, learning early the importance of measure and balance in all things. Their laughter, now echoing through the corridors of time, a reminder of the joy found in even the most mundane of civic duties. As your breathing slows and your body relaxes, consider how the public scales were more than mere tools. They were the physical embodiment of a community's conscience. In their precise measurements, they held the dreams and labors of farmers in distant fields, the skill of millers grinding grain to flour, the artistry of bakers shaping dough with practiced hands. Let your thoughts wander to the taverns and inns where ale flowed freely, each pint a testament to the brewer's craft and the weigher's diligence. In these gathering places, stories were shared, deals were struck, and the bonds of community were strengthened, all under the watchful eye of the public scales. As sleep begins to claim you, imagine the satisfaction of a day well measured of loaves, and casks that met their mark, of a town at peace with the knowledge that all had received their fair share. The scales, in their simplicity, brought a profound sense of justice to every transaction, a tangible reminder that in balance lies harmony. In the quiet of your room, let the imagined sound of the scales finding equilibrium become a lullaby, a gentle reminder that even in our modern world, the principles of fairness and trust remain as vital as ever. The public scales may have faded from our streets, but their spirit lives on in every honest exchange, in every act of communal goodwill. As you drift towards slumber, picture the scales at rest, their work done for the day. The marketplace empty, the streets quiet, but the sense of a job well done lingering in the air. This is the legacy of the public weighing, a tradition that shaped towns and cities, that gave structure to daily life, and that continues to resonate through the ages. In your final moments of wakefulness, let the wisdom of the scales settle into your heart. Like the balanced beam, may your thoughts find equilibrium between the day that has passed and the one that awaits. May your dreams be as well measured as the finest loaf, as satisfying as the most perfectly poured ale. And as sleep finally embraces you, remember that in the grand scale of life, it is often the simplest things that carry the most weight. The public weighing of bread and ale may be a custom long past, but its lessons of fairness, community, and trust remain as relevant as ever. Tonight, as you rest, carry with you the quiet assurance of those ancient scales. Let their balance be your balance, their steadfastness your comfort. In the gentle tipping of the beam, find your own center and let it guide you to peaceful slumber. May your night be as well measured as the goods of old, your rest as satisfying as a loaf fresh from the oven, your dreams as rich and full-bodied as the finest ale. And when morning comes, may you awaken with the same sense of purpose and integrity that once drove the keepers of the public scales, ready to face the day with honesty and fairness as your guiding principles. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets, our journey through the annals of public weighing comes to a close. The bustling marketplace, once alive with the clamor of merchants and customers alike, now settles into a peaceful slumber. The great scales, those guardians of fair trade, are carefully covered and secured for the night, their brass arms gleaming softly in the fading light. The air, still fragrant with the lingering sense of freshly baked bread and rich ale, grows still. The town crier's voice, which rang out the day's proclamations and market prices, has long since faded into silence. In the quiet, one can almost hear the whispers of centuries past, of countless transactions, and the steady march of commerce that shaped this community. As darkness envelops the square, the ghosts of bygone eras seem to stir. Imagine the countless hands that have touched those scales, the countless loaves and barrels that have been weighed upon them. Each measurement a small act in the grand drama of human interaction and trust, played out day after day, year after year. The weight masters and ale conners of old would nod in approval at the legacy they've left behind. Their dedication to fairness and honesty in trade has woven itself into the very fabric of our society, a testament to the enduring power of integrity. As we bid farewell to this tale of measures and men, let us carry with us the wisdom of our forebears. In a world that often seems to move too fast, there is comfort in remembering the simple, steadfast principles that have long governed the exchange of goods and goodwill between neighbors. May this glimpse into the past serve as a gentle reminder of the values that bind us together, of the importance of trust in our daily interactions, and of the timeless nature of human commerce. As you rest your head tonight, perhaps you'll dream of bustling markets and the glint of sunlight on polished scales, of the aroma of fresh bread and the merry laughter of townsfolk going about their day. And so the scales are packed away, the market sleeps, and the town grows still. Thank you for wandering through history with me tonight. May your dreams be gentle and your rest be deep. Good night.